6 years ago, a fire truck vanished without a trace in a quiet American town. No wreckage. No bodies. Just silence. Officials called it an accident, and everyone moved on. But last summer, a diver scanning the bottom of a forgotten reservoir found something no one was supposed to see again. And when investigators forced open the door, they didn't just find a missing vehicle. They uncovered evidence that suggested the truck was never lost. It was hidden. Before we go further, I want you to make a choice. Comment below right now. Was this an accident or a cover-up? Because by the end of this story, you'll understand why some people in this town stopped talking, and why others suddenly disappeared. If you're drawn to true crime stories that expose secrets buried for years, subscribe now. Because every week, we uncover cases that were never meant to be found. Now let's go back to the moment everything resurfaced. In August 2021, freelance sonar operator Caleb Rourke guided his small aluminum boat across the still surface of Briar Lake, just outside the mountain town of Ashford, Oregon. He had been hired by a property owner who lost an expensive speedboat months earlier. Caleb expected an easy job, maybe 2 hours scanning and a quick recovery. Instead, his monitor showed something enormous. At first, he assumed it was a rock formation. But the edges were too straight, too deliberate. The shape stood upright, partially buried beneath layers of dark sediment, nearly 40 feet below. Caleb marked the coordinates and circled back, adjusting his sonar frequency. The object didn't move. It couldn't move. It was heavy. Industrial. His stomach tightened as a rectangular outline appeared near the top of the image. Windows. Large ones. Vehicle windows. Caleb leaned closer, barely breathing. He had grown up in Ashford. He remembered the night Engine 7 disappeared during a supposed bridge collapse 6 years earlier. Officials said it plunged into a canyon river miles away. But Briar Lake wasn't anywhere near that canyon. And whatever was down there had been waiting, untouched, the entire time. Until now, everything was about to change forever here. Caleb didn't report it immediately. Not because he wanted to hide it, but because he needed to be certain. False alarms damaged reputations, and in his line of work, credibility was everything. The next morning, before sunrise, he returned alone. The lake was silent, covered in a thin layer of mist that drifted like smoke across the surface. Caleb secured his oxygen tank, checked his regulator, and slipped into the freezing water. As he descended, visibility dropped fast. His dive light became the only source of truth in the darkness. Then, suddenly, it appeared. The front grille emerged first, coated in algae and rot. Caleb brushed away the growth with his gloved hand, revealing metal underneath. Paint. Red paint. His heart started pounding. He moved closer, shining his light across the side panel. Beneath years of decay, faint white lettering became visible. Ashford Fire Department. Caleb froze. Engine 7. It wasn't crushed. It wasn't tangled in debris. It was standing upright, perfectly intact, as if it had been lowered gently into place. But something was wrong. The windows were darker than they should have been. Not from mud. From inside. As if something within was blocking the light completely and hiding the truth. Caleb surfaced with shaking hands. He knew this was bigger than him now. Within an hour, he contacted the Ashford County Sheriff's Office. By midday, Sheriff Daniel Mercer stood at the edge of Briar Lake, staring out at the calm water with narrowed eyes. Mercer had been in office 8 years. Long enough to remember the Engine 7 incident clearly. Long enough to know how much the town had grieved. He turned to Caleb. "You're absolutely certain?" Caleb nodded. "I saw the department lettering myself." Mercer didn't respond immediately. His jaw tightened. Within hours, the shoreline transformed into an active recovery scene. Deputies sealed the perimeter. Yellow tape stretched between trees. A crane was requested. Divers prepared equipment. Word spread fast. Locals gathered in small groups, whispering. Some looked curious. Others looked uncomfortable. One elderly man left without saying a word the moment he heard which truck had been found. Mercer noticed. By sunset, the recovery crane arrived. The cable hook descended slowly into the dark water. Everyone held their breath. When the steel line went tight, the crane operator began lifting. For a moment, nothing happened. Then bubbles broke the surface, and something massive began rising from the depths, bringing the past with it. The surface of Briar Lake exploded with bubbles as the crane strained under the weight. Thick cables groaned, tightening inch by inch. Then, slowly, the roof of the vehicle broke through the water. A collective gasp rippled through the crowd. Red metal, blackened by time, emerged into daylight for the first time in 6 years. Engine 7. Water poured from every opening as the crane lifted it higher. Algae clung to its sides. Rust streaked down its doors like dried blood. But the structure itself remained disturbingly intact. Sheriff Mercer stepped closer, his expression hardening. "This wasn't destroyed," he muttered. The truck was gently lowered onto reinforced ground near the shore. Deputies circled it cautiously, as if it might still be dangerous. One detail immediately stood out. All the windows were pitch black. Not broken. Not muddy. Blackened from within. Mercer approached the driver's side door and grabbed the handle. He pulled. It didn't move. "Get the spreader," he ordered. A deputy retrieved the hydraulic tool. The metal jaws pressed against the doorframe and forced themselves inward. The sound of tearing steel echoed across the lake. As the door slowly opened, Mercer leaned forward and looked inside. Then he stopped breathing, and his face turned completely pale. For several seconds, Sheriff Mercer said nothing. He simply stared into the cab, motionless. Deputy Lena Ortiz stepped beside him. "Sir." Mercer didn't answer. Finally, he stepped back slowly, his voice quieter than anyone had ever heard it. "Call forensics." "No." Ortiz hesitated. "Did you find remains?" Mercer shook his head. "That's the problem." The interior of Engine 7 was completely empty. Not just empty of people. Empty of everything. The driver's seat was gone. The steering wheel was missing. The dashboard had been stripped down to bare metal. Even the wiring had been carefully removed, leaving only hollow cavities where systems once existed. It wasn't decay. It was deliberate. Clean cuts lined every mounting point, as if someone had dismantled the truck piece by piece using professional tools. This hadn't happened underwater. This had happened before it entered the lake. Mercer stepped back further, trying to process it. According to official reports, Engine 7 had plunged off Miller's Bridge during a sudden collapse. It was supposed to be destroyed instantly. But this truck hadn't been destroyed. It had been emptied, and then hidden, which meant someone had lied. Not just about the truck. About everything. By nightfall, Engine 7 sat under floodlights, surrounded by crime scene tape. Forensics technicians photographed every inch. Nothing about the scene aligned with the official 2015 bridge collapse report. Sheriff Mercer requested the archived case file. According to town records, Engine 7 had been declared a total loss after plunging into the ravine below Miller's Bridge during a structural failure. The report claimed the truck was unrecoverable due to unstable terrain and severe floodwaters. But there had been no bodies. Officials said the 2 firefighters on duty had managed to jump free before impact. Both later transferred departments. Both left town within a year. Mercer's brow tightened as he reviewed the insurance documents. The payout had been substantial. Nearly $1.8 million. Enough to purchase a brand new engine. Enough to fund emergency infrastructure upgrades. Enough to benefit certain contracts. He flipped another page. Bridge inspection reports from the month before the collapse showed no critical damage. No warnings. No instability. So why had it failed? Or had it? Mercer leaned back in his chair. If the bridge never collapsed, then Engine 7 never fell. Which meant someone drove it somewhere else. And someone signed off on a lie. A lie that had lasted 6 years. Until the lake gave it back. The next morning, Sheriff Mercer tracked down one of the original firefighters assigned to Engine 7 that night. His name was Travis Hale. He now lived 2 towns over, working private construction. When Mercer knocked on his door, Travis answered cautiously. The moment Mercer mentioned Engine 7, the color drained from his face. "You found it," Travis said quietly. It wasn't a question. Mercer nodded. "In Briar Lake." Travis looked past him, scanning the empty street, as if afraid someone might be watching. "That's not possible," Travis whispered. Mercer studied him carefully. "The report says the bridge collapsed." Travis hesitated. His fingers tightened around the doorframe. Then he said something unexpected. "I never saw a bridge collapse." Mercer's pulse quickened. "What do you mean?" Travis swallowed hard. "We were told to park it." "By who?" Travis opened his mouth to answer. But no words came out. His fear was obvious now. Not the fear of guilt. The fear of consequences. Finally, he shook his head. "I can't say anything." Mercer leaned closer. 6 years ago, someone hid that truck. Travis met his eyes. And whispered, barely audible. "They said it was for the town." Mercer returned to the station and pulled the original dispatch logs from the night Engine 7 vanished. At 10:42 p.m., the crew had responded to a reported electrical fire near the northern ridge. But something didn't make sense. The final radio transmission wasn't a distress call. It was a location update. Coordinates. Mercer entered them into his system. They pointed directly to Briar Lake. Not Miller's Bridge. Not the ravine. The lake. His chest tightened. That meant Engine 7 had never been near the bridge at all. Someone had rewritten the entire incident. Mercer reviewed the personnel list again. One name stood out. Fire Chief Russell Maddox. Maddox had overseen the department for 23 years. He had personally signed the loss report, the insurance claim, and the replacement authorization. He had also retired suddenly 2 months after the incident. No explanation given. Mercer drove to Maddox's listed address. The house was dark. Vacant. A neighbor approached slowly. "You looking for Russ?" the man asked. Mercer nodded. The neighbor hesitated. Then said, "He moved away real fast after that truck disappeared." Mercer felt a chill. People didn't run from accidents. They ran from secrets. Forensics continued examining Engine 7 late into the night. Every bolt, every surface, every hollow compartment was inspected under harsh white lights. That was when technician Aaron Feldman found something unusual. A section of metal behind where the driver's seat had once been looked newer than the rest. Cleaner. Less corroded. It didn't belong. Aaron called Sheriff Mercer immediately. Mercer crouched beside the panel. "Can you open it?" Aaron nodded and carefully cut along the edge. The metal plate fell away with a sharp clink. Inside was a sealed plastic evidence bag. Mercer stared at it, confused. This wasn't part of the truck. This was hidden. He pulled the bag free. Inside was a handheld radio. Ashford Fire Department property. But that wasn't what made Mercer's stomach drop. It was the label attached to it. Date: October 17th, 2015. Status: confidential. Recording attached. Mercer immediately powered it on. Static filled the air. Then a voice. Clear. Terrified. "Chief, this isn't right. Someone's inside. This isn't part of the plan." The recording cut off abruptly. Mercer froze. Engine 7 hadn't just been hidden. Something had happened inside it. Something no one was supposed to hear. The voice recording changed everything. Sheriff Mercer played it over and over, analyzing every word. The fear was unmistakable. Whoever spoke hadn't expected what happened inside Engine 7. Mercer traced the radio's serial number. It belonged to firefighter Travis Hale's former partner, Evan Mercer. No relation. But according to official records, Evan had transferred out of state shortly after the incident. Mercer contacted the listed department. They had no record of him. No employment history. No transfer. Nothing. It was as if Evan Mercer had vanished. Then the final piece emerged. Divers conducted one last sweep beneath Briar Lake, directly where Engine 7 had rested. This time, they weren't looking for the truck. They were looking for anything else. That was when they found it. A human skeleton, buried deep in sediment, wearing the remains of a fire department uniform. Dental records confirmed the identity within days. Evan Mercer. He had never left Ashford. He had never transferred. He had never escaped. He had died inside Engine 7. And someone had removed the truck's interior to hide his body. Then sank the evidence. And signed papers claiming it was gone. But the lake remembered. And now, so did everyone. If you've made it this far, then you already know. This was never just about a missing fire truck. It was about a lie that lasted 6 years. A lie signed by trusted officials. A lie that buried a man beneath cold, silent water, and hoped no one would ever look down. But here's the part that should disturb you the most. Someone in Ashford knew the truth. Someone lived their life every day knowing Evan Mercer never made it out. And they stayed silent. So now I want to hear from you. Do you believe this was an accident that spiraled out of control? Or a deliberate cover-up from the very beginning? Comment your theory below. I read every single one. And the most disturbing theories often come from viewers like you. And if stories like this fascinate you, real cases, real secrets, real truths buried in places no one thinks to look, then subscribe now. Because the next story we uncover might be even darker. Until then, remember this. Sometimes the truth doesn't disappear. It just waits to be found.